conversation. As you'll notice, there aren't many restrictions on this Zoom, and we've done this because we want to ignite conversation. We want to involve all of you. Sure, the conversation will be led by X Factor, but we want you to participate, and we don't want any barriers to do that. But the downside of that is we need to follow, some general courtesies as we do this. So if you have something you want to say, raise your hand. In the chat, feel free to chat unlimited, right? Be nice, be kind, but certainly share your points of view, what you're doing in your current companies, what you're exploring, some of the bottlenecks or challenges you might have. The goal of this conversation is really to figure out together, a better path forward, help overcome some obstacles maybe some of us are having, and all of that. And make sure if you're not speaking to mute your call. And if you're called on, introduce yourself. Say the company that you work for, your role there, etc. So some quick icebreakers. We have a couple quick polls, and these are just going to help us really understand your experiences so far with AI. We all like to say that we're deep in AI, but that's not always the case, right? Like we have initiatives internally, but how deep are we? So the first poll, um, just to get a gauge of like how you're utilizing AI agents in your company. Here's the first one. So you'll see, not yet. You really aren't using them. Just once you gave it a try. And can you mute your
Sam, Ashley, I'm head of marketing here at Align.
I hear something in the background there.
The chat, so if you have any questions.
Carolyn Crandall, do you mind muting? There you go. Thank you.
So yeah, we will mute you. We will, do all of that to make sure this is good. So how many agents have you built? None? Be honest. Like to build agents today, you need to be an engineer sometimes, or certainly more technical. Maybe you've given it a try once, maybe a few times, or it's a part of the process workflows for everything that you do. Where are you in that? Thanks, Andy. Do you see that, Paul?
Sorry, Jared, did you talk to me?
Oh, no, Paul, not Paul. Sorry,
Oh,
Paul.
sorry.
No, we're
Fair
not gonna
enough.
pull.
All right. So in the comments, I'm gonna put this in here and just respond in the comments. How many AI agents have you built so far? And pardon my North Jersey accent. I say orange instead of orange, Paul instead of Paul, and I'm sure there's other things. I may live in the city the last 20 years, but you can't shake the Jersey out of it. So yeah, just answer in the comments. We have one. I like the honesty. And it might not even make sense to very mature. We're testing it, have three in testing, a couple. How do you define an AI agent? Great question, Paris. So an AI agent, how would you find it, Jose?
It is a LLM that has a very specific role and has a very specific task that it's going to accomplish.
And I would add to that, so like a workflow that's also going to learn and get smarter over time. So where a workflow is a lead comes in, route it this way, given like human commands, AI would optimize and figure it out as well. And great, we're getting we're getting a packed house here, so this is awesome.
Yeah,
10 plus. I love. I
go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I'm going to ask the second question here, and then Jose chime in. So, like, how successful have your agent builds been? And then Jose, what were you saying?
No, I was gonna elaborate on your comment on the definition of agents, right? The A lot of the effort that is going on right now is around what they call scaffolding, right? So you get an LLM from a vendor, and then you start adding all these additional things. One of them is this concept of memory, and there's a lot of different types of memory. So there's long-term memory, short-term memory, procedural memory, et cetera, et cetera. And to your point, yes, it's supposed to learn, but if you implement the memory incorrectly, it won't learn. So absolutely, learning is should be a priority when building agents.
I love this room now. We have some really honest people that are using AI and tools that they're implementing. Some are building agents, some are advanced. So we have the whole spectrum here. I want to pass it to Jose and Stephanie to dive in.
Fantastic. I wanted to thank everybody for joining. I'm gonna hand it to Stephanie to introduce herself, and then I'll introduce myself. And I think from from our perspective, we're just going to go through just a very short set of slides and then just open it up for conversation. We want this to be more conversation than us presenting anything. Stephanie?
Great. Yes, hi. My name is Stephanie Martin, and I am the VP of Go-to-Market and Revenue Operations with X Factor. I've been in sales operations and RevOps in many different capacities for over the past 18 years. And I am, I've put my time in at companies in cybersecurity and enterprise software. And so learned firsthand a lot of the challenges we're going to talk about today. And it's also why I'm so excited to, be with X Factor and sort of be part of the, revolting against the status quo, as Jared calls it. So thank you for having me.
And Jose Romero, I'm the head of product at X Factor. Just a little bit about me because I'm probably one of the odd people out here in this meeting, right? From a role perspective. Started as an engineer, then after 10 years, decided to move into an operations role, mainly as a sales engineer. Then I was running a region in Latin America for a few years. So I felt the pain. I feel the pain. I know what some of you have gone through. I'm not a RevOps operator as many of you are, but I did have a go-to-market role for a few years, and then I learned about product management. I've been doing product management for about 20 years now, uh, and large and small companies. Most recently at Amazon, doing AI for personalization, and I've been doing AI or building AI tools for over a decade now. So what we wanted to do for this talk is talk a little bit about the problems, right, that RevOps has, and discuss, what we're seeing going on in the market, and then just open it up for questions. As as Stephanie introduced herself, she is the RevOps expert at X Factor, and works very closely with me and my team on building tools for RevOps, right? So what we're basically seeing is that the job is becoming harder. Um, More and more tools are coming out, but then figuring out what is the right set of tools to use for what purpose is becoming more and more challenging. So, as the title says for the deck, it's around the RevOps lever stack. And what I mean by that, and we'll go into in more detail, is a lot of things that you could be doing to solve problems in the RevOps space. It's very complicated. It's what we call in the math world a multivariable problem. So we'll talk about those things and potential avenues to solving them. So first, I want to talk about this, right? So this is this visual talks about the current CRO work week. And what's really eye-opening about this is that the majority of the time that a CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, spends on during a work week is firefighting, when they're actually supposed to be spending more time on long-range planning. This is from Gartner. So there's something wrong here, right? There's something really wrong as to why is an executive spending most of their time firefighting instead of um, what they're supposed to be doing. And you know, my take is that this is why the tenure of a CRO is so short. Um, has I wonder what everybody's opinion on this slide is, and if they agree or not.
Yeah, would love to see in the comments if people can relate to this. This is something we hear a lot, and not just from CROs, by the way. Like I think we see this a lot, with RevOps. I mean, I feel like so many of us are, a little bit underwater with our workload and, projects coming at us from a lot of different directions, and it can be really hard to pull back and kind of, understand the big picture.
I like Pete's comment.
Yeah, Pete. That's right. So, yeah.
So
Yeah.
so then part of the challenge is that this is the GTM engine, right? Is very complex. And the diagram what we're trying to show is that there's really three big legs here. So there's more, but these are the main legs: sales ops, marketing ops, and CS ops. And many companies, not everybody, but many companies treat these as silos. Each of those teams does their own thing. And the tricky part is that if you move one part of, or you optimize one part of the stool, it actually could, jeopardize another, right? So, uh, as everyone knows, these things are interconnected. So the question is, if you keep these things as silos and not you may inadvertently negatively impact another leg of the stool. Any other questions or comments on this one? No? Okay. So I mentioned CRO levers, right? There's a ton of them, tons and tons and tons of them. These are just a quick sampling, right? But everything from marketing levers to sales levers to customer success levers and even financial levers. And you move one of these, and the problem is that there's the causal effect on others, and that is not obvious in some cases. So some moving one lever may impact another lever. So that actually could be problematic. So first and foremost, knowing what all the levers are and their interdependencies and how they all work together is something that everybody needs to understand. And uh, Alina asked, curious if there's one leg that's prioritized more typically in the short run. Um, yeah, that's a good question. Would love to hear people feedback if they want to chime in the chat. I think it may have to do with who's the leader and what their experience is, but it's just my take on it.
Or we could bring
Yeah.
somebody on the screen too.
Say that again?
Anybody want to
We,
raise
we
their
could,
hand to
yeah.
chime in on that? Yeah. Yeah. Short-term gains.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, well, I think, what we see a lot is that the new CROs of
Here,
today are oftentimes, promoted from sales leader positions. So they do have a little bit more familiarity and strength in running a sales team. And so therefore, they're coming up to speed on marketing and customer success and how they're interrelated with what they do. And, it's a big job. It's a lot of moving pieces. I would say there's never a shortage of data in most cases. In fact, we probably have too much of it sometimes. It's that analysis paralysis situation. So it can be hard to really see, for CROs to see the big picture and what's all going on. And I see Steve Busby has his hand raised. Steve, you want to?
Okay. Hey, Stephanie and Jose. Yeah, I'm Steve Busby. I run a company called Revenue Operations Associates, we basically go in and do comprehensive assessments of the entire go-to-market motion. But to the question about, what are the common levers, what you typically find is too many levers from the top of the funnel all the way through retention and expansion, but it does vary by company. But I would say the general highest value levers out there for small and mid-sized companies tend to be on the back end, the churn, retention, expansion, monetizing your customer success function. But they're all over the place. And to the point about CRO challenges and long term, I mean, when you go in and fundamentally say, let's take a look at your go-to-market plan, is it comprehensive? Is it long range? Does it detail out the execution, who, what, when, where, the KPIs, who's accountable? Most of the time it's a full stop. There is no long-term plan, so therefore the CRO is going to be struggling and putting out fires. So you really need a foundational component to all this stuff, and to answer that question for your company about what are my levers? Okay, there's too many, but how do I prioritize them and get cross-functional buy-in, alignment, and all the things that you can start to operate more with a long-term strategy and execution framework.
I would agree. It's, moving into that long-term thinking, long-term strategic thinking is where we need to, focus.
I would love to call on Scott because Paul, Paul, said he's a bit biased, but sales, he thinks we get the short-term gains. And Scott had, a pretty nice comment here. Scott, do you want to unpack this? Come off
Very
mute.
glad to. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Glad to add to that. I mean, it's in my experience, both at big company, I've run sales orgs at Oracle and Okta, as well as startups. I've kind of seen the big and the small, and it gets difficult everywhere. It doesn't seem to matter whether it's a large company or a small company. I've seen heads of sales and CROs get so caught up in the quarterly results and the pressure as soon as they're hired. Management has no patience to say, yeah, go ahead and take 6 months and figure out a strategy. It's like literally they're running around wondering in the very first couple of months how the quarter is going to go, and then they obsess over that in the forecast. And of course, sales teams change; they have to hire more people, and competition's terrible, and they get called to go to events and come into meetings, and they end up just running around doing everything they think is going to help them close the quarter, meet quota. And they never step back. And then they realize that, I'm going to be a short timer if I don't close quota. And so they don't then why bother doing long-term strategy? It's like a self-fulfilling, vicious cycle.
Couldn't agree more with that.
Then the one of the challenges, right? I mentioned the causal effects that this approach has, is that you sometimes fix one lever and you break another, right? So in this example, the team worked really hard to shorten the sales cycle. So now they can close deals faster, but they've never actually synced up with marketing to make sure that they had enough leads coming in. So now sellers are sitting on their hands waiting for new leads to come in, to have qualified leads that they can work, because they've closed deals faster. Now there's no opportunity to work. So that causes an issue with the pipeline, which could also impact attrition, right? So now you have sellers who are not happy because they're not going to hit their number because there's not enough deals to work. So keeping in that, this is just a very simple example, right? But there's way more complicated examples that you could also consider.
Yeah.
So
Just to kind of add on to that, like it's a great point about why getting out of that quarterly operating rhythm and quarterly obsession is so important because if you're just focused on that and what's happening in quarter and what deals are closing, you're missing the forest for the trees of a lot of these other underlying, issues that, can be harder to surface unless you know to look for them, unless you're on top of it and can anticipate. And a lot of people just don't have the time to think this way or don't have the expertise to go digging for that information.
Just to wrap up on the slides here. So that effect causes this thing that we call the gross guess gap, which is, you're having you have your plan, you have your target where you're going to go after, but then things happen, right? Whether it's things that you cause or things that happen because of the market, and now you're guessing. Many companies that we speak to, whenever I ask questions like, for example, what's your attrition rate or what's your ramp time, they have a hard time answering those questions because they typically are, trying to, finger in the air, making a guess of what that is. And the challenge of that is that, as if you don't have a good um, data-driven approach to answering many of the questions on what all these levers are, how are you going to be able to affect them? Right? So you first need to understand what they are, predict what's going to happen in the future, to then be able to have a plan to affect those. Right? So the uh, and that's one of the reasons why I joined X Factor, is that the mission that we have in this company is to solve that problem. And I saw the same thing over a decade ago when in development we had this idea of a waterfall approach to software development. When I was working at Motorola, it would take 9 months for a new phone to come out. So we spent, a good month and change in requirements, a good month and change in design. Then we went into writing code, and eventually the phone came out. But what happened is that 9 months, where you're like from the moment you start to the moment you deliver the new phone, things could have changed. And now you've delivered something to the market that wasn't really what they needed. So I see the same thing in go-to-market. I see that many plans are developed many, many, many months before they actually are executed on. And by the time they're executed, now they are stale because the data is stale because things happen, right? So a lot of guessing going on. So we think that this is a big part of the problem. So I did want to, changing the topic slightly, ask a question. So what's the biggest technological innovation in 1985? Can I have some people in the chat make a guess?
The radio?
What was that
Just
again?
kidding. I said the radio,
The
transistor
radio?
radio,
Not quite.
Macintosh.
Ah, I think we have somebody that got it. Yeah, couple.
Interesting.
BlackBerry is the second
BlackBerry.
biggest technological innovation.
No, BlackBerry was way later. And the internet, sort of. AI, concept of AI has been around for a while, but as we know it today. So the answer is actually a few people hit it on the nail. It's Excel. So Excel is a tool that's been around for 40 years, and many RevOps professionals are still using that. So it's a technology that, of course, has improved, but in its core is the same thing. So it's very limited as to what you can do with it because of its own abilities. And now, we're moving into an AI world, and many RevOps professionals have started to adopt AI and try to solve problems that we're solving in Excel using AI. So let's talk a little bit about that transition. So in engineering, right, in the engineering world, when the large language models started coming out, there was a lot of adoption to what they're calling vibe coding or context engineering, which is you as a software developer sit down and instead of you writing the code, you tell the machine what you need done, and it goes ahead and writes the code. You review the code, and you determine whether it did a good job or you make some adjustments. So you become the manager of the machine who's doing all the work. So it drives higher productivity. It can drive higher code quality, and it makes it easier for anybody to do vibe coding. So now you don't have to be an expert coder in order to build something. The reason I'm bringing this up is that you know as software development has moved to vibe coding, wonder what the answer is to what's the equivalent for go to market. So what we've seen is that there's this new concept that is starting to emerge of the go-to-market engineer. The big challenge is that a lot of people are uh, trying to, in essence, learn the tool, become, in essence, an engineer, um, and using and switching from spreadsheets to automation, using tools like Zapier and 8n, and then large language models to try to solve some of these problems, right? And this it all it and the tools like Zapier and N8N are great for basic workflows, but this basic automation cannot solve some of the harder go-to-market problems. Some of the go-to-market problems require experimentation. You're going to try things out, right? So um, if those who are familiar with the concept of A/B testing, like you want to try an approach against a different new approach and see which one wins, and then you pursue the one that wins. So many of the existing workflow managers don't allow for that. They're not built for that. They're built to solve this very specific workflow. What people, there's a lot of hype about, oh, is AI going to take our jobs? I think what AI is doing right now, at least, is replacing specific workflows, specific tasks, right? So they're automating tasks, not replacing a person, and the person becomes the manager. So that role, the RevOps role, um, it should be right. And the value that a RevOps person provides is to drive strategic focus to the company, to drive that revenue. So that should be their primary role. So all these tools should basically help with that. And so my challenge with this whole concept of a GTM engineer is that now we're asking the RevOps team to become from becoming an Excel expert, which as we mentioned earlier, that was the tool of choice, to becoming an LLM or an agentic expert, right? And the reason is that there aren't enough tools out there to solve a lot of the problems that the market needs. So wanted to stop here and open it up for conversation. This is the last slide that I had, and wanted to get some sense from the group as to what do you guys think about this whole concept of a GTM engineer? Are you seeing some of it? What are your opinions on it? And those of you who are doing this sort of job, um, what have you learned?
Let's call on
Yeah.
let's call on Andy here. He just came in with like a real hot topic. Andy Lindsay.
Yeah, hey, I don't know if it's that hot. Yeah, I'm Andy. I work at I'm GTM engineer for Caption Hub, like a multimedia localization tool. And I'm just putting my laptop onto charge. All right, yeah. So there, I think there's just been a real shift with because stuff is moving so quickly, and like every other week there's like, oh, AI can do this now, oh, AI can do that now. This new agent's just come out, and the as a result, and because vibe coding is kind of so accessible, it also means that the market is kind of flooded with like B2B SaaS enablement tools. So I think if you can work on like just keeping up to date with general tech improvements and just work on your general problem solving and like out of the box thinking and be able to apply that to whatever comes up, that's going to make you so much more versatile and so much more resistant and kind of amenable to change because like AI world is just all about change. So yeah, get good at that. That's my hot take.
I agree. For me personally, I was a lot of times just frustrated by, the tools at my disposal and still have, the same tools at my disposal, but, I wasn't able to use them in a way that allowed me to work at the level of speed and sophistication that I really needed to. Like to pull, reports or to get a dashboard put together, like, that can sometimes take a lot of cycles to make sure that you have, the right people to put the, dashboards together that understand all the mechanics of, go-to-market metrics, who understand Tableau or whatever the tool is you're using, or Excel for that matter. And by the time they've put kind of all of that together, you've kind of maybe even moved on to something else that's, the next fire that you're fighting. So my mind, the way to approach this and the way I think about how to use AI, yes, that there's a million use cases for AI agents to do some of the work of, what a sales rep needs to do throughout that person's day, or a customer success person, make their life easier, speed things up and whatever. We need the same thing as RevOps and CROs and people who are sitting in that strategy seat, trying to understand performance and make decisions in real time. Like, this is the challenge I think that we need to hone in on. And then having AI really purpose built for us as operators and strategists and architects versus getting into the nitty gritty of building agents themselves. Like, it's important to have a real-time data model that kind of knows go-to-market and can watch for all these things that we all know are happening. It's just kind of hard sometimes to surface them out. And then once we know what's happening, what do we do about that? Like, there's a ton of complex work that happens in that process. And I think that's where we're coming at the AI kind of approach is how can we, create an AI native solution for this problem is like, making decisions and understanding performance and then predicting what's going to happen in the long run because, we want to get out of that quarterly, firefight. So, um, I see a
Oh,
bunch of thoughts popping up here about
I,
that.
before I call on Danielle, I have a bit of a hot take as well. Like I think AI is being used very tactically now. Um, trying to get the meeting, trying to move the deals, all of this. And we have some strategic thinkers that aren't as versed in AI as like the people that are just like hammering it with the tactics, for like the small thing. So today we're people are shouting like you need to be AI native, which means you need to be a little more technical of a person to understand the systems, like be able to put together workflows and do things like that, where you might not have ever done that. And there's a gap from those that know and those that don't. But I think tomorrow AI is going to have, and by tomorrow in like 2 months, 2026, AI is going to have to be more human native. And the real differentiator will be the strategic thinker that now could type in complex workflows similarly to how you chat GPT something. For instance, like, hey, I want this because they know what they want. They just can't necessarily put the systems together to do that. But that's just my take. Danielle, I think, had her hand raised.
Yeah, just on this topic and building out. I know there was some talk about like go-to-market engineer, is that a fad? I truly think kind of to what you were just saying, Jared, like it's not, it's the natural evolution of like, think about when I came up in RevOps, we didn't have a lot of tools. We had Salesforce. And Salesforce, you built a lot of your own apps in, right? And then all these like hundreds of point solutions came out. So then you had to get really good at all these point solutions and integrating them. In this next phase, it is a lot more of that, like, how are you tying the, clay type of insights you can put together and pull out into some of these other tools you have. The challenge I think we're running into the most is we are doing some what you'd consider pretty cool shit with clay, and trying to get it into the hands of reps, but then the reps are just sitting in their own chat GPT. So like they could kind of care less what we're sending them, and they're just going into their own ChatGPT account and like putting their own prompting in and using that. So it's this kind of like, how much are we spending on evolving our use of AI and agentic stuff when we don't have that adoption or buy-in? And the reality is, you have the buy-in on the surface when you roll these things out. Everyone's like, "Oh, that's so cool. That's great. That's going to be awesome." And then they just go back to what is comfortable. Um, and so that's our biggest challenge, honestly, on like executing some of this stuff. Um, and then, there's all the pressure of getting into agenic outreach and whatnot, and how actually productive is that? I mean, someone responded similar to what I'm reading everywhere else, but then you're getting a lot of pressure from the CROs and leadership teams to lean in more on that agenic approach and you know, optimize on headcount and the people that are not buying into the AI stuff as it is. So I don't know. I
Danielle,
don't know if that was a topic starter or not, but
but I'm curious. In your example, you're doing things that you think are cool in one department, and reps are doing their own thing in another. Why do you think that is? Do they not agree with what cool means to you? Like, is it not helping them hit their goals? Like, like, I mean, like, cool probably has an objectivity behind it, I assume. And why wouldn't they get on board if that objectivity makes them more money? That's where I'm trying to
the
understand.
discovery I've done with the reps on this stuff. So like when I started this company, we really didn't have a strong ICP understanding. So we not only put together an ICP, but used Clay workflows to actually put a fit score. So like one rep when I came in had 10,000 accounts in his name in a territory, right? So you'd think that's absolutely
Hell,
like
hell.
impossible to prioritize outbound whatnot, right? So like this cuts it down to us saying, okay, ICP fit score 8 to 10 is really where you should be focused, because the score is based on all those compelling events that they're going to go into ChatGPT and reap. So like that's the challenge we're running into, is like we're providing the scoring, the prioritization, the compelling events that drove that score all in a summary, and then they're going to ChatGPT and like finding the exact same information. So it's like they're duplicating the efforts. And I don't know if it's the trust element or, and then I have reps that have been here for several years that said, that's really great that like you're providing this stuff. I think it's cool for the newer reps, but we've been here and we know what works. Now they just closed their first deal all calendar year. So like I could, come back and say, I don't agree that you know what works because it hasn't been working. And so like that's where we get like the reps that just want to do what they were doing and what they've known from selling. They don't want to necessarily adopt a newer way to approach their territory.
That's our problem too. I'll just add to that. I agree with 100% everything you just said, or at least it lands
Wow.
really well with me. The other thing that I would add is I do think that there are some reps that really like to chase like cool logos. Like they
Oh
really
my
want to
God.
close open AI, and that's going to be the career maker for them. But like when we put up the like when we score the leads, like the ones where the deals that they're going to go that they have to go after to hit their number this quarter and next quarter are not necessarily like amazing, like super exciting, innovative companies all the time, right? Like, so I think that there's, some career coaching and education that we have to do with the reps to say, hey, listen, like there's a short-term and a long-term approach to your career, and like short-term you have to listen to us and work the accounts that we're telling you, and long-term you can mix in some of these like stretch logos.
Yeah, that was the biggest feedback from the reps that had been here. They were so afraid that they would miss out on that one exception that might be an ICP fit score for. And I was like, well, you close lost threes, fours, and fives in the last 2 quarters. The only deals we've actually closed one are all actually 8 and above, which is nice validation for our team. We clearly approached the compelling events correctly. But like I
Yeah.
guess we do all that age-old adoption stuff where like we've had 2 quarters now of this fit score where we can feed back and say what, like, look, it does work if you buy into it. But yeah, it's a trust
Um,
in like getting them out of their own.
Yeah, and I think it's important to help them understand that AI is not a one size fits all thing, and that there's advantages to using purpose-built domain specific tools for specific things, and that, your chat GPT of the world, may or may not be, doing the best job at what it is you're trying to accomplish. There was just actually a great article in the New York Times over the weekend about this topic, about how, it's super important to, think about AI and in the job that it's doing and the specialization that is built into the AI for what it's doing. Because, I think the example they gave was, playing chess. Like if you try to play chess with ChatGPT, it's going to make a bunch of mistakes and it doesn't really know the rules all that well. It'll hallucinate and whatever. Whereas if you're going to play chess with a purpose-built chess, AI machine, it knows the guardrails, it knows all the moves, it knows to avoid illegal moves, and so it's got more guardrails kind of built in and around it. So you just have to think about that in this context as well, and whether that's, Clay for the sales reps or, you know, um, X Factor or Ventive or, any of these other tools that we're talking about. Um, does it have the understanding and context that it needs to do the job the best way possible versus, a Chat GPT or a Gemini, which doesn't have all that context and learning and memory and all of that. That's what I took away from that great article this weekend. So
It's like we've revved up this room, so to speak. Never
yeah,
have more people come into the second half and the conversation's popping. I actually want to hear Lisa. She wasn't expecting me to call on Augusto, who's an enablement leader who chimed in that leaders are being hard to enable as well. Are you still here, Lisa?
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone. Hi, Jared.
Hey.
It's not actually I do enablement and I do operations. I just have the enablement title, but I get the privilege of doing two jobs. The yeah, leaders is currently my blocker right now. It's making them understand the concepts of velocity, of automation, and I know a lot of these are really, really foundational, but I think where we are in my organizations, and I'm based in the UK, although I'm connecting to you from Italy right now. And my organization is global, but mostly based in Europe. So we're taking a more of a European sort of take to that. Which means that things operate slightly differently from American-based company that I have worked in before. So things move a little bit slowly. And when we talk about bringing in certain solutions that automate a lot of the workflows in different areas that replace a lot of the basic work that reps are doing, I think it's the ability for them to connect and visualize this in their head in a way that actually delivers value for them. And we can use all the figmas, we can have all the conversations, but I think sometimes is getting them to kind of change what happens today and what their revenue is like and how they predict it to happen, and actually look at how small changes in their behaviors today can have an impact at scale tomorrow. So what we've done to influence that is to actually really run a very strong and very deep behavioral analytics on how reps operate. So to understand, okay, how many contacts do I need to engage every week, month, quarter? How many of them should I pursue? How should I pursue them? What are the signals that I need to look at to understand when I need to drop them and when I need to continue pursuing them? And when we have that, we can create funnels of engagement and then build automations from both a marketing perspective and a sales perspective to understand exactly where the sweet spot is and give signals to reps. But this is a lot of theory and connecting them into understanding the changes they need to make on the day-to-day is really, really challenging.
what I find really interesting, the conversation has shifted towards helping sellers sell. Um, and we haven't even touched the topic of customer success and renewals and upsells and cross sells, which I know is a big part of the job in the go-to-market space. And then, Lisa, you slightly touched the topic of marketing, which is a completely other animal, right? Because optimizing what marketing is doing to drive higher ROI, and then making sure that the marketing team is aligned with the rest of the sales team on their job. And something that is very seldomly discussed is how can marketing help with upsells and cross sells, right? So most of the marketing revenue is spent on new deals, not on upselling existing. So I wonder if what is everybody thinking about how these tools could help with those problems?
That was my expected answer. Just kidding.
I was gonna just, yeah, on the CS side, I think we're
As we see the CS tools drip, yeah.
I was like, we're so focused on the sales and the marketing side. I think they're so excited to get anything downstream. So, something around like compelling news, and they're like, oh, we can run this for our customer base too. Like, that would be amazing. We'd love to stay on top of intent fit scores and upcoming renewal news and things of that nature. So, I try my hardest to involve them, but I will be very transparent. It feels like we build for our go-to-market sales and marketing teams, and then CS gets a lot of the like goodness when it's pretty easy to transfer some of that stuff.
Yeah, we focus on the handover because we're kind of handcuffed by how much conversational data, customer data, whether that be conversational or product, we can actually put into AI right now, just from a like data policy internally. And I'm not sure if anyone else is running into that, especially like prospects. I'm kind of on the okay to use AI as like with my best intentions and smartly, but on the customer side, I'm pretty handcuffed on what we can do. So like we're focusing on where we can add productivity. And like one of our big pain points when we mapped out our customer journey and handovers and stuff is there's so much gold in the prospect sales process conversation, the medic information they're capturing on like pain and metrics. So using AI to help summarize as much of that from the prospect to customer handover. So CS has and PS have like a starting point so they can actually say, hey, I understand these are the metrics you were hoping, put together impact plan earlier in the onboarding versus like after doing all that discovery again.
Because
Yeah,
some
we've. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jose.
Right.
I was just gonna say, Danielle, we've had some customers in Europe, especially that will like redline contracts and say like don't use like we have a field in Salesforce that's like AI opt out, you know. Now, fortunately, our customer agreements default to opt to allowing that use of data, so it's a very small minority of customers in our case. And what I've actually found is in the last 3 to 6 months, we've launched new AI features and demoed them to them and said, hey, we know you're not allowed to use this, but we just want to show you this. And now suddenly they want to go and put the pressure on their legal team to come back that they see the business value. So I do think that even just I've seen the change in the last 1 to 2 quarters. There's a lot more willingness, I think, to get on board with this way of working. So it might be worth maybe getting a couple of these flagship customers that are the real sticklers and trying to knock them down.
Yeah, no, and the reason I bring that up, right, is that again, as a leader, you're trying to figure out what all these levers are, and sometimes new deals is the right place to focus on. Sometimes it's not, right? A CS leader told me once that the ROI of the marketing campaigns for their customers to drive upsells and cross sells is like 3x, 3 or 4x the ROI of campaigns for new business, right? So, in other words, every dollar spent on upsells is, drives a much higher impact than new business for that business in that point in time. So again, the if you go back to the beginning of the conversation, there's a ton of levers. And it's, I think, critical that as leaders, we understand what are all these levers, and then which ones are at my disposal to move around. And then if I were to move this by 1%, what's the impact, right? And then, how many can I move to get to my end goal of hitting my number? And not, trying to look at it comprehensively, not just at one part of the business.
So kind of playing off of your earlier comment about, because I've been on a lot of these round tables where when we're talking about AI, the conversation naturally gravitates towards the, tactical measures of efficiency and effectiveness for sellers or, the individual GTM teams. I think we need to be focusing on ourselves and what are the AI use cases for ourselves, and what can AI do, the hard work around that makes us have a better understanding or perspective on, not just what's currently happening or what happened in the past, but what's about to happen, and how can I kind of influence what's about to happen? Like, how do I get ahead of that? What are those levers? And so, I just liked maybe for the next couple of minutes to try to understand, like, is anyone doing that? Is anyone using AI or, tools to help yourself have a better, broader understanding of, what's happening or what will happen kind of going into the future? Or is that kind of a newer concept that we're bringing to the table here?
Stephanie, hi. I don't know if you can hear me okay, but I jump in on that. What we're doing is when we're in the software kind of subscription business, and we're mapping our sector using kind of various data sources to try and see who's in market, who's coming in market, and then layering external subscription data with our internal data, and in a way that only AI can do because there's such a volume of data. So, is there a prospect that has gotten cold and is likely to be in the market again? Is it worth reaching out to them? Did they engage with us the last time? Is there a customer whose internal signals are saying they're likely to churn, and then external signals are saying, hey, they're starting a trial with somebody else? So I think that's where AI can do a lot of heavy lifting for us, not doing the outreach and maybe suggesting the playbook, but actually, if we can find a way, and there aren't great solutions out there to do this, I haven't found one yet, but is putting all of that data into one place and then allowing the AI to do the heavy lifting, to surface what might or might not be about to happen.
Yeah. And we have some other folks kind of chiming in about this as well. Scott or Aaron, do you want to?
Sure. Great talk today. Thank you so much. So I work in a complex enterprise B2B sales environment, multi-billion-dollar kind of mid technology and services company, and we have very complex SKUs, customer relationships. It's the standard enterprise environment. It's not a net new environment, or pure net new environment. I've found that building very tailored tools at the same time you're trying to, in essence, sort of process redesign, whether it's a sales life cycle or the customer engagement life cycle together is critical. Like, one of the things that I drove is we've collapsed our MQL SQL process together just as one, and we just call it the MSQL. It doesn't make any sense, but whatever. It's not two, it's one. There's a lot of friction there because people have had these nice, neat roles generationally, and typically marketing people struggle with the fire as it gets hotter, around the customer side, and the losses, just the L's, right? The win loss, right? You lose a lot, and marketing people I found don't like that, and then salespeople struggle with the accountability of supporting the full GTM lifecycle, and then they don't like that because the incentives. So I ultimately we've sort of figured out that the incentive mismatch is enormous, and I think that's the real. I found that that's probably the biggest challenge. I don't think we have a tooling challenge. I think we have an incentive mismatch challenge, because incentives for all these personas are just, it's like you're in 20 different companies, you know, and there's almost zero alignment at the top level, CSO, CMO, C blah blah O, to change that, because there's a sort of embedded thinking. Well, hunters get paid this way, marketers get paid this way, you know, and and we're sort of stuck with that thinking. And I think that's a real challenge, basically, fundamentally.
How do you think
We
about
gotta,
trying to?
sorry, we have to
Oh,
wrap up
okay.
now.
Sure.
We should continue these
we
conversations with the X Factor team, who's been a phenomenal sponsor. Tell me X Factor does all of this, Stephanie and Jose.
So our goal is really to arm CROs, and leaders and strategic thinkers with an AI native platform that does help provide insights into what is the data telling us, and how can we use that to make real, like interpret that data to understand causes, to model out effects of potential changes, and simulate changes, and predict kind of what's going to happen, to make preemptive decisions, right, and influence the outcome. That's where we see RevOps really moving towards. And then of course applying all these, tactical measures and AI solutions to deal with the problems that are kind of surfaced out there. But unless you kind of understand the big picture, you may be putting, band-aids on the wrong problem. So I think, we have to start with, being more strategic, and, using an AI purpose built for that, for the purpose of growing a company profitably and predictably.
What a phenomenal sponsor. Led such an engaging conversation. This is just the start of Revolt. We have our next session in a couple hours. Be there for the keynote of X Factor during Revolt. I'm going to throw up a QR code right now because we want to get feedback. This is something that we want to continuously do. And thank you all. So stay on for a minute just to take a screenshot of this. Is it Harriet or Angela that's going to share the screen here and get this up? And then, yeah, we have a phenomenal day coming up. Boom. Take your phones out, do this. Let us know how we're doing. We're going to keep leveling up for you all. X Factor. Oh my gosh. Incredible job, and incredible product. And we're so fortunate to be working with you guys.
Thank you for
Thank
having us.
you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you all. All right, we probably have enough time for everybody. Take this. Thank you. Let's go. Next session in a couple hours. Take care, everybody.